Good morning, everybody. We're not starting, I don't think we're going to start just yet, or we are, James? Okay, we're about ready. Just so you know, we are on camera, so smile. We have officially started streaming, so thanks.
The bright green means it's on.
Well, those are different. For the ones that are on the big stand, just press the button with the face that shows that you're talking, and the right light will be on. And then the other ones are the green light that are just the one button, so, yes.
Good morning. I am Ricky Hurley. I am filling in for Sage Turner. She couldn't be here today, and I'm Vice Chair with the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium. And I'd like to welcome you to our August 27th, 2025 meeting. And thanks to staff for this little script. I appreciate y'all for that. All consortium members and staff are participating in person today. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We're also streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have the option for a public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801. Again, 855-925-2801, and use the meeting code 8763. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. For today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, and the meeting code 8763. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. I will now go through and introduce all the board members and staff leadership. Board members and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Sage is not here today. Jessica Trotman. All right.
That needs to be updated. We have a different alternate from Black Mountain.
Okay.
Her name is Michelle Kennedy. She's not here today.
Okay. All right, thanks for that. And Savannah Parrish. All right. Sam Starbaum.
Here.
Thank you. Jennifer Miranda.
Good morning.
Good morning. Eric Rufa. Elizabeth Hanson. And I see John Connett.
Here.
Good morning. Jonathan Jones.
Good morning.
And then Emily Brewer.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Okay. And again, I'm Ricky Hurley. Jeffrey Adams. Or Ashley Minery.
I'm Lee Stevens, and I'm taking Elizabeth Hanson's place for
Okay.
Henderson County.
Okay. What was your name again?
Lee Stevens.
Lee. All right. Welcome. We're glad to have you as well.
Thank you.
That was none for Transylvania.
None for Transylvania, no. And then Alice Berry. Is that an alternate?
Yeah, good morning. No,
Hey.
I'm the primary. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, Al. Sorry. It's like,
That's all right. Yeah, we had a shift, but
yeah, that's fine. And Rod Honeycutt. All right. So, Chair, I think we have a quorum then. We can move forward. Let's see. Matthew Card. Yeah, he wasn't on there. I got Matthew Cable. So Matt Card. Sorry, missed you.
Good morning.
All right, I'll keep rolling here. So if quorum's met, we'll start with the first order of business, which is the agenda. And we've got the attendance, approval of the June 11th, 2025 meeting. Do I have a motion, if everybody's read that?
Mr. Chair, so moved.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, get a vote. All raise your hand and say aye, or does aye?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Hopefully it passed. We're going to need to reorder the agenda, and just as a point of order, we have the housing needs assessment presentation with Patrick Bowen. We're going to move that toward the end, so we don't have to rush, and also I have another item I need to get to back to the office. We move that down to number 8 and just slide everything else up in order. Is that all right? Can we get a motion approved to amend the agenda?
Motion.
All right, and a second? All right, thank you. Vote aye? Aye. Aye, thank you. All right, moving on to project updates from the city staff. I think Kaylee Pullum has some home program updates for us. Thank you, Kaylee.
Thank you, Ricky. Hello, consortium members, partners, and any community members watching. My name's Kaylee Pulliam, and I manage the home program for the city of Asheville, and I have a few project updates I'd like to share with everyone. First off, in Henderson County, we had Henderson Habitat for Humanity close on their 2019 funding. That was a total funding amount of $106,000. They were able to close on 2 more additional homes. That was $43,000. With their 2019 funding, they were able to assist 5 families in total. And then the next step for Henderson Habitat is to go under contract for their 2023 funding, and that's a total amount of $160,000. The next project update is in Transylvania County, and this is with Commonwealth Development. They had their groundbreaking ceremony at the beginning of the month. Fairhaven Meadows had a combined home funding amount of $1.3 million, and out of that $1.3 million, they were able to get 5 total home assisted units out of it. And then another thing to note with the Fairhaven Meadows project is this is the first affordable housing project in the city of Brevard within the past 13 years. Next, moving on to some environmental review updates, starting with the Housing Assistance Corporation. They received the authority to use grant funds for Apple Ridge back in July. Receiving the AUGF is a large milestone in the closing process. It unlocks the home funds, and activities like clearing the land are able to start. Next, moving on to the Community Housing Coalition of Madison County. They also had 3 environmental reviews completed for their 2023 contracts, 2 of those being in their rural rehab, and then another one in their rural replacement funds. Again, now that the environmental reviews are completed, the work on the projects are able to start. And then another thing to highlight with CHC Madison County is that they've recently closed out their 2020 rural rehab contract. That was a total funded amount of $150,000. And then they're also recently closed out their 2021 funding amount. That's for their replacement contract of $205,000. Going back to Apple Ridge, we just wanted to provide an update for the consortium. Their current funding amount for Apple Ridge is $900,000. That was an initial $600,000 with 2024 funding, and then an additional $300,000 was added from rescinded funds from fiscal year 2023. The city is adding an additional $40,000 to the total funding amount, and this is to cover underwriting costs for the project. The funding is going to come from program income and previously canceled projects, and then the addition of this $40,000 does not require a substantial amendment. Any questions on project updates?
I don't have any, but I would say that's exciting with the kind of market. There's a lot of slowdown in the market to see Fairhaven breaking ground, especially in a community that's not had anything in a while. So that's very exciting for them. And so thank y'all for working on that project. Anybody got any questions? All right. Kayla, you can just continue on with the application review committee then.
Perfect. Like Ricky said, the next action is the application review committee. So city staff are requesting to have 1 member from each jurisdiction to participate in the committee, and it doesn't have to be a county member specifically, just anyone from the area. The committee members will be working with city staff to score our upcoming applications. City staff will then summarize the scores and bring a total funding recommendation to ARHC, hopefully in our next meeting in December. City staff are currently working with our application software Neighborly right now to get the applications up and going. We hope to have applications open at the end of the fall. Do I have any members from the Transylvania area that would like to volunteer?
This is Emily from Brevard. I'd like to volunteer.
Thanks, Emily. Anyone from the Henderson area?
And just a point of clarification, you do not have to necessarily work for the county itself, so you could work for Hendersonville or like Emily, Brevard, we're just asking for one representative from each county of the consortium area.
This is Lee Stevens from Henderson County. I can volunteer for Henderson County's representation.
Thank you, Lee. Anyone from Buncombe?
I'll volunteer for that.
Thanks, Jonathan. And finally, anyone from the Madison County area? Yeah, you can be part of the committee. Perfect. And then just to recap for the upcoming application cycle, we have $300,000 in tenant-based rental assistance, a little over $500,000 going towards rehabilitation projects, $400,000 in down payment assistance, and then we have our Choto operating reserve with $52,000 in it. And I think that was everything for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hurley. My name is James Shelton. I'm the Community Development Division Manager at the City of Asheville. Thank y'all again for coming in this morning. It's really great to have y'all. As part of our participation and being the presiding jurisdiction of the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium, every 3 years, the City of Asheville is required to recertify ourselves as a consortium. So we went through that certification process this summer. And during that certification process, we've had some unfortunate news that over the past several years, this body has attempted and done the right things to add the municipalities of Mars Hill and Marshall to the consortium. However, the Department of Housing and Urban Development does not have official record of that ever actually being completed. So unfortunately, Mars Hill and Marshall are not actual voting members as of this time. We have every intention of getting them added this year. However, federal regulations do not allow us to add them in the middle of a fiscal year. So we will be able to add them and then have them become voting members again once the fiscal year comes back around to July of next year, which is the beginning of our fiscal program year. So this consortium took efforts over the past, I think, 15 years to actually do this. And I think there's a lot of institutional memory here in this room about the efforts undertaken to do that. But it seems that that HUD never actually got this across the finish line to actually be recorded and have it in their records. So we're going to do it clean. We're going to make it happen. We have a couple of options. Option one is that all consortium members must approve the addition of new municipalities, or the consortium can provide the authority to the presiding jurisdiction to add members so long as we inform the consortium of those new memberships. I'd be open to hearing y'all's recommendations, but either option can be undertaken this fiscal year. But new members, as I mentioned, cannot be added until the next fiscal year. One thing I want to make extremely clear is that this does not preclude the towns of Mars Hill or Marshall from not receiving investments through the consortium. So all the programs will be running and rolling out this year and moving forward. Residents of Mars Hill and Marshall and projects in Mars Hill and Marshall are eligible. It just means that the municipalities of Mars Hill and Marshall do not have a vote on this board as of right now because they were never actually, according to HUD, actually added as members. Any questions about that? I know that that's tough news to deliver, and I'm sorry to have to deliver it, but I think we've got a pretty clear path ahead of us, what we need to do, and we're going to get it done.
I think it's just good news to know that there's no projects that are in the pipeline that are threatened by this kind of paperwork snafu.
Yeah.
do you need us to do anything on next steps, or is that going to be at our next meeting to vote on one of these options?
That will be at the next meeting. I think I'd like to have a little bit of a discussion, if y'all don't mind, on option 1 or option 2.
Okay.
Of kind of get a recommendation from this body of which path y'all would like us to pursue. I think in the past, the path that was pursued was to allow the presiding jurisdiction. What we would do is amend our joint cooperation agreement to say that the presiding jurisdiction, the city of Asheville, may, at its own discretion, add new member municipalities so long as we inform the regional consortium. The other option is to have all consortium members at a meeting vote to bring all new members in as a single action. So we're open to either way, whichever way y'all feel may be best.
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna speak for Hendersonville, right?
Go ahead.
So, I would prefer option 1, to be honest with you. If we're gonna operate as a consortium, all members, have an equal, Asheville is the presiding. I appreciate that and appreciate the job their staff does, but I think it's, as far as transparency goes, and running this as a regional consortium, my opinion is option 1 is the better of the options from Hendersonville's perspective.
I agree, and just wanted to clarify that when you say all members, that would still be a quorum to make such a vote.
Yes, that would require a meeting, at a regular meeting, a vote be taken to add all members, and it must be a unanimous vote to add a new municipality.
Yeah, that was my only question, was it members like us as the voting member, or would our governing board need to do one of these options? That was kind of my minutiae, because you're adding somebody, another government entity. That was the only clarification I would have. But I prefer option 1 as well.
Yeah, I believe this group in a regular meeting, as the voting members of this, being the board, yourselves, that you would be able to add those new members.
Anyone else got a preference on options? I think right now we're hearing number 1.
I would agree with option 1, and I also think that, in addition to us operating as a board, I hope that we can, as a group, support each other and be able to show that support for those communities and be able to work together. So not only from a regulatory perspective, but I hope that we'll be able to support them as a group as well.
Great point.
I agree with everything that was said, and I have this question, just looking at the language, it is so frustrating to learn this because we are not far at all from the beginning of this fiscal year. We're only about 6-8 weeks removed. And Lord knows I love a loophole. When we say new members, is that voting members? Is there a way where they can be non-voting members and still participate so they are aware of what is happening? We can have options for training, for input, so we can know and get them in part of this culture we're trying to build, just understanding that they can vote.
Yes, absolutely. They are welcome to attend meetings and come and participate. They just cannot, at this point, be voting members of any official meetings. But they are, of course, invited to come.
Okay, have we reached out to them, and how does the consortium feel about reaching out for participation?
I think it's a great idea. Absolutely. I think it should be at the table. So when they do come along and become full members, have that capacity to jump right in.
Yeah, this could be a steep learning curve, so I think the earlier we can get them in and get them as part of a culture, and we can know what's happening up there too, everyone benefits.
Well, to be fair, they have operated as members in the past. I believe even representatives from Mars Hill or Marshall have actually acted as vice chair in the past. So it's been the consortium's understanding that they are members, and that has actually been fully gotten across the finish line. We've operated in the past as if they're full members, and we want them to be full members. It's just unfortunate that HUD has no record of that actually occurring, so we have to jump through the loopholes, jump through the hoops to make it happen.
Gotcha, thank you.
Thank you. So I believe I'm hearing direction to staff to undertake option 1, to bring an item to this body at the next meeting to take action to add 2 additional municipalities to the consortium. Could I ask, just to make it official, could I ask for a motion? Or Vice Chair Ricky, would you mind?
Yeah, we can ask for a motion I guess I'll start it with, for option number 1. So I guess somebody wants to make the motion officially. Who would like to do that?
John Conant with the City of Hendersonville makes the motion that we follow option 1, where all consortium members must approve the addition of new municipalities.
All right, second. All right, and we call a vote here. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Thank y'all. I appreciate that. I know that's not the best news, and I apologize to the municipalities of Mars Hill and Marshall, but we're going to do everything we can to get it straightened out.
All right, thank you. So I guess that brings us up to the last one for regular items, is the home art. And that's you as well, James.
Yes, this is an exciting update. Back in 2021, the city received an allocation through the Home American Rescue Plan Act of about $4 million. We undertook a planning process to develop an allocation plan that puts about $3 million toward deeply affordable housing construction and about $1 million, actually a flat $1 million toward supportive services. We have just last night received authority from Asheville City Council to bring on an implementation firm to assist us with this. We're going to be bringing on ICF International. They are a firm that actually has provided technical assistance to the city of Asheville since the storm for our regular, not our regular, but our CDBG DR rollout. So they are actually HUD's trusted, verified, go-to technical assistance provider. So they're going to come on board and bring us application development and policy development assistance, underwriting and award recommendations, as well as contract development and negotiation. So as a reminder, that allocation plan, $4.7 million, $3 million to development of affordable rental housing, $1 million to supportive services, and HUD allows us to use, and in the allocation plan, 15% for administrative and planning costs. The cost of this firm will be paid 100% out of the administration bucket. So there's no, in terms of the allocation plan, no cost affected to those buckets of $3 million or $1 million to those two different programs. So we do anticipate rolling that out, actually getting a contract executed in the next couple of weeks so that they can start doing work for us and rolling out an application process to fund what I think staff would recommend is to do a maximum of 2 projects with the $3 million and then identifying partners to administer supportive services with the $1 million. We're a little bit more open with the idea of how many partners we do with $1 million, the supportive services. But I think all of y'all are aware of how much housing costs, construction costs have accelerated over the past couple of years. Our recommendation would be that we fund not 10 different projects with $300,000 each, but 1 or 2 projects to really have an impact on filling the gap that those projects need. Any questions on how we're rolling out, moving forward with our home ARP allocation?
James, can you just, for my own edification, describe or define supportive services? I mean, just for the public and for us to just clarify. I think I know what that means, but can you just define that?
I'd be happy to. So in the allocation plan, it actually calls out specifically mental health support services. So in the allocation plan, it's what was identified as the deepest need for using these funds was to address deeply affordable housing as well as preventing homelessness. So using that $1 million to help with mental health support services, behavioral health, addiction support, as well as reducing barriers to housing. So that can look like housing counseling services, helping folks get connected with tenant-based rental assistance that might be elsewhere. So it's the service connectivity to get folks who are at risk of becoming homeless or who already are homeless connected with the services that they need to be able to have a steady place to live.
So if I understand correctly, then, sorry for the questions, but just want to make sure, if there are local governments, nonprofits, whoever, that in the region, in the housing, in our region, home region, they would be able to apply for money to provide these services to tap into the $1 million, and they would go through an application process and have to provide the metrics or be able to prove that they're delivering on their promises, right? Delivering on their casework to show that they're using money appropriately.
That's exactly right. So in the past, it's similar to our tenant-based rental assistance program where we sub-allocate those funds to a nonprofit or another governmental entity. who has the capacity and willingness to administer those funds and get tenants connected with housing. So this would look very much like partnering with a nonprofit in our communities who is good at doing behavioral health type services to address folks who are at risk of becoming homeless or who are homeless.
Thank you.
And James, the administrator, we're contracted with them because there's been an opening at the city. Y'all have been trying to fill right for a while. Is that part of the reason why we had to go with an outside agency?
It's part of the reason, yeah. We've gone through several attempts to hire for a home ARP program manager. We had one person accept an offer who then declined. We had folks who we made an offer to who, in the parlance of our generation, ghosted us. So we just had some folks who were not super interested in the position. And the work that needs to get done is the kind of work that we need folks with specific expertise that is hard to come by locally. So actually underwriting home programs and getting us the deals done that we need to get done is kind of a hard skill to find that exists in our community. So we're super happy to have these guys come on and help us do it.
Okay, I think it's important to know that this is not, sometimes the public questions why we're always contracting out, and I think such a specialized, very, very specific type of discipline and skill set, it is hard to find this area, so it's kind of helpful to know that. And it's how many years is this? Is it 2-3 year?
And that's one of the things I would like to also mention is that it's a grant-funded position and it's time limited. It's led to difficulty with folks wanting to accept it, as we could not offer more than 2 or 3 years of employment. We do have a spend down timeline of September 2030 on these dollars. So we have a much tighter timeline with the firm we're bringing on to execute on this and have contracts executed for projects and funding expended within 3 years. So that we're targeting 2028 to have all these funds totally expended.
Yeah, I think that's another important point, because here we are staring at 2026 already. So, all right. Is anybody else got questions or comments about?
How will jurisdictions know about that million? About timing as far as applications or any nonprofits within our jurisdiction?
That's a great question. Yeah, we'll definitely be needing to roll out some communications, and that's part of the package that we get with this firm is they can help us develop communications, working with our internal communications team, but we also want to rely and lean on our consortium member governments as well to help push the comms so that when we do launch an application, we'll be sending out our own press releases, sending out communications through our listserv, but we also need our partners too, because this is not, y'all know this is the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium. These dollars are eligible to go where they are most needed across the whole consortium area.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, James. Do you need a vote for us? That's just information. I think it's just information.
No, that's just informational. I want to keep you on the loop.
All right, thank you. All right, so before we jump into the presentation, I guess we need to run through public comment.
I think we can do the presentation
Okay.
before public comment. I think that's up to y'all. I don't know.
All right.
Public comment will be at the very end.
Okay, that
Yeah.
sounds fine with me. All right, so I guess that brings us to the housing needs assessment presentation with Mr. Bowen.
Thank you. So I will be bringing up Patrick Bowen in just a moment, just to remind the consortium that earlier this year and last year, we partnered with Land of Sky Regional Council to undertake our 5-year consolidated plan. In partnership with Land of Sky Regional Council, we also have partnered with Bowen National Research. Patrick Bowen has a history of working with this area and doing housing needs assessments, I believe, for more than 10 years, at least 10 years. I believe this is the 3rd iteration of a housing needs assessment for our 4-county consortium area. So we, back in June, we submitted our consolidated plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development with the data that Patrick and his firm have provided to us. Yesterday, we had an event at Blue Ridge Community College where Patrick presented most of the information that you're going to hear today to our community across the entire region. We had a panel discussion that was great. Patrick also presented last night at Asheville City Council, and he's here this morning to give you a housing needs assessment update to the consortium. So if y'all would please welcome Patrick Bowen. I think you had it in PDF. Is that? Oh, yep.
Thank you for your help. All right, well, good morning, and thank you for having me here. As James said, this is the third time we've done a regional housing needs assessment for this area. So 2014 was the first time, and I spoke back then to multiple groups, and then in 2019, we did it again. And so one of the benefits of having us do this with the history is you are going to see some of the changes. You know, that's not common, so that's kind of a joy for me as a data person to kind of watch the evolution of a community, a region. But for your benefit too, I think, as you all decide on what happens with housing and where certain resources go to, you get to see, okay, are we making a dent? What is changing? How fast are we changing? And so it's not just the history though. I'll show you where you're heading is through 2029, so that we're gonna get history and a little look to the future. And James, this is the third time now in the less than 24 hours, he's gotten to see this. So James, you could do this. You could. I'm just saying, if something happens and I got to run out, he'd just step in. You could do it. I believe in you. All right. Well, I enjoy doing this, so I'm glad you let me do this. All right. So this is the scope of work. And as James said, the whole goal of this was really to feed into the consolidated plan. And so if you have ever read through one of those, HUD has specific questions and topics they want covered. And so part of that is a housing needs assessment. So while there's probably many things in your minds that you would be curious if we could study, we probably could. But remember, we've got a specific scope of work that we were asked to do and to answer the questions that HUD had for us. So this is the scope of work. It's the 4 counties within your region, and then we have Asheville itself. And one of the things I want to make sure people are aware, not just here, but those watching online or listening, if you only cared about a particular county or you just want to see Asheville numbers, we have set aside chapters. So it's a quick way to look and understand in 30 pages or so what's happening in Henderson County or what's happening in Asheville, or whatever your interest is, using that for grant writing purposes or going into a public meeting or whatever it might be. Condensed information for each jurisdiction. What you're going to see here today is how each one of these counties and Asheville itself kind of compare to each other. How do they play into the region as a whole? So again, individual chapters, if that's what you're interested in, a specific geography, but also how everybody fits in with each other. So those the 4 counties. Asheville, we had a lot of demographics, a lot of economic information. It's a housing study, so guess what? We got housing information in here, rentals, as well as senior care facilities, so nursing home, assisted living, things like that. For sale housing, both historical and then what do you have available. We looked at evictions, foreclosures, community services. So where are community services kind of concentrated? How might that affect housing decisions or even developers' decisions on housing? We have some information on special needs populations. We have the Hurricane Helene's impact on the area. We had a survey. Some of you may have participated in that. I think we had 48 stakeholders across the region participate and give us some good insight. And then we have the housing gap numbers for both rental and for sale housing, and it's at a different affordability level. So we looked at the whole spectrum, from the lowest income households to the highest income households, again, for both rental and for sale. Now, because of the time that I've been given, I've cut this back quite much shorter than the Blue Ridge presentation I did yesterday. So there's a lot of this stuff I won't cover today, but certainly I'm here both in this public format, but if you wanted to, catch me afterwards and we want to talk about something, we can certainly talk about that stuff. All right, so there's a lot of good demographic information in the study, a lot of population information, but there's also households. And so for a housing needs assessment, what I focus in on is the households. Households meaning 1 person in a housing unit, 4 people in a house, that's a household, right? And I study that, or focus in on it for the presentation, is because that drives the demand for housing units, drives the demand or illustrates the housing needs of a community. So I'm going to show you pretty much just household information that I felt was most relevant. Again, a lot of topics we covered, but these would be the most critical. Y'all know you've been growing as a region, and you're expected to grow. So from 2024 up through 2029, you're expected to add about 7,000 households. So you will need additional housing. That should be no surprise to anyone. Now, there's more things that drive housing needs and ultimately the housing gaps I'll show you at the end. There's people living in housing that's poor quality, they pay excessive amounts towards their housing costs, other things. But this is the starting point. So you're gonna grow, continue to grow, and add additional demand for housing. So we factored that in. And then you can see here, this is total households, again, over different points in time, all the way back to 2010, projected to 2029. But I marked over on the far right-hand side in the red box there, how each community is expected to change. Now, there's a lot of things that'll affect that, obviously, some economic issues that could happen locally or nationally, policy decisions in Washington, D.C., home mortgage interest rates, a lot of things that'll drive changes for households. But nonetheless, most of the growth in this region, almost 7,000 households, 5,000 that'll be just right here in Buncombe County, 2,200 of which would be in Asheville. But even Henderson County's got notable growth. Now, because Madison and Transylvania counties doesn't show a lot of growth, a couple hundred households each, there's other things that drive housing demand, and ultimately, in those housing gap numbers I'll show you at the end. But certainly you have a lot of growth, and I know that brings a lot of challenges to a community, but I study a lot of markets, different types of markets. There are a lot of markets, communities around the country that wish they had your problem. They're really trying to grow and trying to find economic investment, and that's not a challenge here. All right, so another thing that I wanted to show was households by age group, heads of households. So the top graph is showing the distribution of households, the younger households on the left-hand side in the light blue, working their way across over to the dark blue. You got a lot of folks age 55 and older, and it really is across each one of the communities, so it should be no surprise. That in itself, this is who you have today. I'll show you at the bottom there in a second, but you have a large concentration of age 55 and older households, so that's gonna affect your current housing, but how you expect it to change, that's the bottom graph. That's 2024 to 2029, projected change in households by age group. Where you expect it to change, that 35 to 44, 45 to 54 age group, and then anything over 65, but most notably, look at the age 75 and older. So part of that is people that are already here, they're gonna age in place. Part of that is people coming here to retire, right? This is a great place for folks to retire to. I met a couple people at the restaurant I was at 2 nights ago that were not from here, but they retired here, so, and they are seniors. So again, this is gonna drive the type of housing, at least part of the type of housing this area is going to need in the years ahead. And while I don't show it for the growth numbers for each of the different communities or counties in Asheville, it is in the study. So if you, again, just wanted to see what's happening in Henderson County, you would be able to see these changes in household groups and what might that mean for housing products. So again, I'm showing you some regional stuff, some of the individual counties in Asheville, but keep in mind, everything I'm showing you is available on each of the 4 counties and the city itself. And by the way, I mentioned real quick that those 2 groups, the bigger groups, the 35 to 44, 45 to 54, that is a national trend for the most part. So nothing unusual here. And then 65 and older, again, a national trend. Where you're different is that 75 and older. Nationally, that's not the biggest growth area, but that's certainly happening here. So that's gonna affect, obviously, at some point, some of these folks are not gonna be able to stay in these homes. They're gonna wanna downsize and things of that nature, but you'll see in a little bit, you just don't have a lot of housing for people to make a move, downsizing or otherwise. So another one I felt was pretty important to show you is renter households by income group. The graph on the top is 2024 distribution. So the lower income households are that lighter blue on the left, and again, as you work your way across to the higher income households on the dark blue on the right, where are most of the renter households at? Really, it's those first 2 shaded areas, that light blue and light gray. Basically, anybody making less than $75,000 a year. So you have a lot of renters that don't make a lot of income. And when I show you the rental housing supply, whether it's apartments or other like single-family homes or whatever it is, you don't have a lot of housing that's available. You have housing, but you don't have a lot of housing that's available to these lower income or even what some might describe as moderate income renter households, but yet that makes up a large part of your market. And then the bottom graph, again, this is just regional numbers. Where's the growth expected from 2024 to 2029? It's renter households that make over $50,000. So one of the things that I've said in the 2 presentations I've done already is I caution folks that even though I have the decline in those lower income households, that is not a signal or a barometer that you do not need more affordable housing. You do. And I'll show you some of the data on that. But nonetheless, because even on the inventory that y'all have that's for these lower income households, there's large wait lists. You have people living in housing they shouldn't be in other cases that you absolutely have a need for affordable housing. So this is not to be a end all in terms of, okay, what should we just build? This is the only thing we need to have is housing that's available to those that earn $50,000 and higher. That's not the case. But obviously with that higher income growth, you're gonna have demand for higher end rental product. And this is owner household, so it's the same stuff, now a little bit different. You see all the darker blue, those are people that make over $100,000. So that makes the largest share in, I think, every community or every geography that we looked at. And then at the bottom, where is the expected change for homeowners over that 5-year period up through 2029? It's those that make over $75,000 a year, with most notably the growth is over $100,000. So you're gonna have, you have a lot of higher end housing, higher priced housing. I'll show you that shortly. You're gonna need more because this is a significant growth base in the region, especially again, those that make over $100,000 a year, which would equate to about a $300,000 or higher home. All right, so this gets to, again, if you keep in mind that decline in the lower income renter households in particular, and I guess homeowners as well, I wanted to look at, well, who's in this market and what kind of housing are they living in? So what I show in here is on the left-hand side, the older product in that orange. It's pre-1970. So get some sense of the age of the product, and Asheville's got the oldest product, no surprise. But then it's overcrowded housing is in the red. That's a housing unit that has 1.01 or more persons per room, not bedrooms, per room, so it's counting the kitchen, everything. That's serious overcrowded housing. And so you can see on here, I'll just go the bottom peach row there, or near the bottom says PSA. That's, by the way, PSA, I should have said that in the beginning. PSA is primary study area, that's the region. So anytime you see that in any table, graph, or anything, PSA, primary study area, that's the region as a whole. But you can see as the region as a whole, you've got, if you go across the overcrowded as well as, believe it or not, we got a lot of households living in units that have incomplete plumbing or kitchen facilities. Grand total, you have about 3,500 overcrowded households. Biggest number, no surprise, in Buncombe County, just because you have more households here. And then you have over 2,300 households that live in units that lack complete kitchen or plumbing facilities. So these people are housed. And so the discussion has to be within a community and within your organization. It's like, do we do something about this? Or do we just worry about growth and those kind of things? And these people are housed, we don't want to worry about them. They're living in substandard housing conditions. And so one of the paths through this, and one of the things I'll show you when I show you the housing gap numbers at the end is a lot of people think of housing gap numbers as, okay, well, we just got to build all these units. No, part of a solution, it's common sense, but I need to say it, is part of this is just preserving what you have. So again, or modernizing it and repairing it. So there's a case to be made that there's people living in housing they probably shouldn't be in terms of quality, to some degree, the age of the product. And so preservation of existing housing, modernization of that should obviously be part of a discussion across the region. All right, so this is housing cost burden households by each of the geographies. I put in the red text at the very bottom. So housing cost burdens, many of you are probably familiar with what that is, but if you're not, or the audience, those are people that pay over 30% of their income towards their housing cost. It's a federal definition, so that's considered too much. But in the orange text at the very bottom is severe housing cost burden households. Those are people who pay over half of their income towards housing, over half. It's hard to wrap your head around that. It's hard to imagine we have that many. And so just here in the region, you have 13,000 severe cost burden renter households, over 10,000 homeowners that are severe cost burden. So 23,000 people are spending more than half of their income towards housing costs. And so one of the things I mentioned to folks, again, my job is to educate, right? I don't have an agenda, do this, support this, or whatever. But I think people need to understand if one of the headwinds that a community faces could be NIMBYism, right? It's not uncommon. Maybe some elected officials or other decision makers are making it a tougher time to address affordable housing. The thing I always tell people is this: you may not make housing a priority, but if you think of it this way, this is absolutely an economic issue, because everybody, every household that spends more, especially those that spend more than half of their income towards housing costs, that's less they can spend in your restaurants, your retailers, for other things, let alone having enough money to pay for their essentials like healthcare, good food, transportation. But spending to the economy and adding to the economy, this holds back economic growth in a community. So to me, if it were me, this would be one of the cases I would be making, that absolutely housing affordability and what people spend towards housing is an economic issue to the larger economy. And I'll just mention real quick, again, that Peach Row with PSA, the region as a whole, your shares are pretty close to what the state average is, but nonetheless, you still have just a large number of households struggling with housing costs. All right, so this is one of the things we spend a lot of time on. It's not easily obtainable. This is where my staff actually calls and talks to leasing agents at individual properties. And many times they actually go to the properties themselves and talk to the property managers. And they collect a lot of information. I'm just going to share a little bit with you. So it was 179 multifamily apartments surveyed, over 20,000 units, over 1,300 available. And you see in the red box, I compared 2025's vacancy rate with 2019's. And the region as a whole, at the bottom, 6.5%, up from 3.2%. So if there's any positive signs that I'm sharing with you, this is probably one of them, in the sense that you do have more vacancies. You normally want about 4 to 6% vacant. The community wants vacancies for a healthy market. Again, 4 to 6 is considered healthy. Developers obviously want 0% vacant, right? They want the most occupancy, they want the most revenue for their properties, but you want some vacancies. And so you've now kind of gone above, as a region, slightly above where you need to be, but that's really Buncombe County that's driving that at 6.9% vacancy. And a lot of that, I'll show you in a second, is really in the market rate stuff. But your vacancies have climbed for at least 3 of the geographies. No real change in Madison and Transylvania, but there wasn't much product surveyed there. So more vacancies at least gives people more options. But where are those vacancies? This is a breakout of, again, the 5 different geographies we looked at. So we have market rate, which is unrestricted. There's no government subsidy tied to that. And you can see where the vacancies are, Buncombe and Henderson County. I will acknowledge that in some of the places we surveyed at the time we did this, which would have been this spring, there were some new properties in their initial lease-up stage. So it's not necessarily we have a vacancy issue. It's just at the time we surveyed them, they had brand new units. We had to account for those, and so it does drive the vacancy rate up. But for everything else, tax credit, which generally serves households that make about $45,000 to $75,000 in this region. And then government subsidized, it's households that earn less than $45,000 a year, generally. And you could see for those 2 affordable housing components, look how low those vacancy rates are. Anything in red's below 1%, but they're all low. I think that the highest in Asheville's tax credit at 1.4%. Again, you want that at 4 to 6. You want vacancy so people can move around, they get married, life changes, whatever it might be, that they need some place to go, or even people that want to relocate to this area, where can they live? You want some vacancies. For affordable housing, you do not have that. And that's one of the reasons, too, that you have those large numbers of severe cost burden households, is because, well, if I'm a low-income household and I want to go rent a tax credit or government subsidized project that I might qualify for, I have very few choices. So what do? I can't get into one of these. I'm going to go find something on the open market, and the rents are pretty high for those. And so I end up being cost burden, or I'm going to go choose a housing unit that it's low quality, doesn't fit my family needs, and so it's overcrowded, substandard housing, but I'm forced to make that decision because that's all that's left for me. So you can see the consequences of having a limited availability. Another thing I wanted to show was pent-up demand, or wait list of the different program types, property types across each one of the communities. So virtually every community has some kind of wait list for each one of those types of products. The biggest wait list overall for the region, shown in that peach color down at the bottom, you have over 1,000 households waiting to get in tax credit rentals, and you have over 700 trying to get into government subsidized housing. So we work with a lot of developers, so they're gonna look at many things, but one of the things they're gonna look at is pent-up demand to say, okay, we have a lot of growth here, but I have a significant pent-up demand for additional housing. And I suspect the real wait list is much, much bigger. because we've learned as we talk to property managers or leasing agents, some people call and say, how long's your wait list? In fact, you see on some of these you have a number where it says HH, those are households. Then I have also some properties report months of the wait. And so you can see some of these, let's go down the tax credit row there, up to 24 months, Buncombe up to 36 months. So you have these long periods of wait. So if I'm a person that's calling a tax credit property, do you have anything available? No, you can get on our wait list. How long is that wait list? You could be waiting 2 to 3 years. Okay, well, thanks, never mind. And so a lot of people don't even get on the wait list. So I suspect the pent-up demand is substantially greater than what shows here. But nonetheless, you've got a lot of people waiting. This is probably interesting to you all. I would hope it is, and that is, I keep giving you bad news. There is good news in all of this. There is opportunity, and that's really probably the takeaway from this. This is median market rate rents by different bedroom and bathroom combinations. So the black numbers are the current rents, or at least from this spring, and then the red is going to be from 2019 when we did the survey of all this. Look how much the rents have climbed. There's no exception. I mean, they're climbing up for each one of these different combinations, bedroom, bathroom combinations in each market. I mean, in most cases, they're up $400 or $500, some cases $600 from where they were back in 2019. And so you can see, I'm a renter. Patrick Bone's going to relocate here. I'm going to rent. I just got a job. And so I don't have much available to choose from the apartments, but I found something. But the rents are so high, can I really reasonably afford these rents? So you can see multiple challenges that exist for renter households. I left this one in there. I was cutting out a lot of slides just to make sure that I kept to my time limit. But I thought this was an important one. So these are housing choice vouchers. And for the public who may not know, again, housing authorities within the area issue these housing choice vouchers that help subsidize somebody's rent. And so 3,900 of those were issued region-wide. You can see the bottom left of the table. And then 4,700, if you can go across the table there, you have almost 4,800 households on the wait list. You have more people on the wait list than vouchers that you have that are issued. And so there's significant pent-up demand. Again, kind of a common theme. Properties have big wait list. Voucher requests have a large wait list. And again, I suspect some people just don't get on the wait list because they give up. So I suspect there's more people wanting to get vouchers than what this data shows. One of the things I'll mention, it's that orange box there. It's the share of unused vouchers. I think Henderson had the highest at 3.7. When I was here years ago, we did work for Dogwood Health Trust, and we were looking at 18 counties in the region, including these 4 counties. And there were multiple counties that the unused vouchers were well over 10%. Because properties wouldn't take them. There's a whole story behind that, but good news is most of the vouchers are getting used now. There was a time when they were not because voucher holders just couldn't find a place that would accept them or just didn't have vacancies. That is not the case now, but pent-up demand for vouchers. All right, so if you can't rent an apartment, what else can you rent? These are what we call non-conventional rentals, so single-family homes, duplex, mobile home, unit over a storefront, anything like that, anything that's not an apartment. That's non-conventional rentals. You see in the blue box there, there's about 38,000 of these, so it makes up 2/3 of all your rental units in the region. So people think of rentals, they often think of apartments, but it's really this part of the segment that makes up the majority in most markets. My staff is exceptional at what they do, and so they really spend a lot of time trying to track down what's available. We found 413 of these that we put in the table. When I compare those 413 with the 38,000 non-conventional rental units in the market or the region, you come back with an availability or vacancy rate of 1.1%. Again, you want that to be closer to 4 or a little higher. So even in this segment, the vacancy rate is extremely low. And then look at the rents. Again, just like I showed you before, the black is the 2025 rents, median rents by these different bedroom types. And look where you were in 2019. So again, another common theme, it's echoing from the apartments is relevant or evident here, and that is rents have escalated significantly. Just to get into a 2-bedroom unit is gonna cost you close to $1,900, at least at the median level, and almost $2,500 for a 3-bedroom. And look at the increase on the 3-bedroom median, $1,575 up to $2,488. So just substantial increases. And again, that's all feeding into those households living in severe or housing cost burden housing situations for renters. So you can see the challenges for this segment as well. And then I just showed here, again, vacancy rates of these non-conventional rentals. Again, you want to be 4 to 6%. And I wanted to illustrate it by each one of the geographies to say, look, nobody's escaping this. Every one of the geographies are having this low vacancy rate for non-conventional rentals. And then just wanted to show the rents by each one of the geographies. The light blue shows 2-bedroom median rent, and the dark blue shows the 3 bedrooms. And then on the far right, you can see that green line showing you the regional number as a median at 1,900, and then 2,488 for the 3 bedrooms. So again, everybody's got similar rents, which was rather surprising to me, but nonetheless, these are high. I mean, you'd have to have, at a $1,900 rent, you'd have to have an income of $76,000. And there's a lot of renters in the region that do not make $76,000. All right, to me, this is some of the more fascinating stuff, not that the rental stuff wasn't. But we looked at historical sales activity, home sales. And so in the graph on the left is the blue bars represent the number of homes that were sold each year up through 2024. And you could see where it kind of started to slow down in 2023. What was going on? It was home mortgage interest rates took hold. And so it did slow down home sales activity. What it didn't do was slow down the median price in terms of increases. And that's a little bit different because most of the markets that I'm studying, even high growth markets just like this region, we've seen the home median sales price level off. Some cases decline a little bit. It's not slowing down the train here, right? Your prices keep climbing in this area. And you were at, as of the end of last year, $453,000 as a region for the median sales price. So then on the right-hand side, I just wanted to show you how each one of the jurisdictions compare with each other in terms of median sales. Very similar, with the exception of Transylvania, much, much higher at $470,000. And keep in mind, this is the historical part. I'm going to jump to available next, but all the data for each one of these jurisdictions, we cut it up so many different ways. The year built, number of bedrooms, age of product. So we keep slicing it up to see is there certain characteristics or trends. So a lot of fascinating data available in the study. And then what's been sold in terms of price point, you can see the bulk of it, or at least the highest portion is the housing priced over $500,000, with a vast majority over $300,000. So a lot of higher end prices that have been sold. Let's show you what's available. So this is the table, or the box there showing you the number of homes that were sold. And the 3 times that we've studied this area, 2014, it was 3,600 units, 2019, 2,700 units, and then in 2025, 1,486. So you're seeing this noticeable decline over time. I put in parentheses the availability rate, so it's like a vacancy rate, where I take those available homes, compare it to all owner-occupied units. And so in 2014, you were at 3% for home ownership, because it's like rentals, you have a range you want to fall within. For home ownership, you want to fall between 2 to 3% for a healthy market. And so you were there in 2014. You were there, but on the lower end in 2019. But now look where you're at 1.1%. Now that's not unusual as we see market after market. It's close to about 1 to 1.5%, but nonetheless, you can see your shrinking inventory that poses in itself many challenges for potential home buyers. This is the change in those 3 different points in time, 2014, 19, and 25, for each one of those jurisdictions. And again, nobody is different than any other community. Everybody is seeing a notable decline in their inventory of available homes. Then I did the same exercise of coming up with the availability rate. The light blue or royal blue is 2019 versus 2025 numbers, and the dark blue, virtually everybody was in that 2% range. I mean, Henderson County was at 1.9 back in 2019. But again, you want to be in that 2 to 3% range. Now look where you are. Each one of these communities is under 2%. Some of these are down closer to 1%. So again, drastic decline in terms of what's available. These are not healthy numbers. It's not good for a housing market. You want availability, you do not have it. To me, this is probably one of the most fascinating things. So this is region as a whole. This is the number of homes that were available at again, 3 points in time. Look where you were in 2014, in that light blue, or royal blue, call it that, priced under $200,000. You had over 1,000 of these homes. And that dropped to 229 by 2019. And I remember, it was my last presentation I gave in March of 2020, and I remember having my little bottle of hand sanitizer there because there was a virus, nobody knew what it was, right? I was like, I'm not getting this virus, and so I had my hand sanitizer there. And I remember saying in that presentation vividly, I said, look at that inventory that's plummeted in those last 5 years, between 2014 and 2019. I said, I bet if you bring me back in 5 years, that inventory will be gone. Well, I was wrong. You got 28, right? But that shows you this trend that's happening. So I'm gonna say it again. If I come back here in 5 years, look at that inventory at between $200,000 and $300,000, right? It's almost gone. So what's that 300 to 399 range gonna look like in the year 2030, 2029, right in that area? Is that the next one to go, right? And so you can see what is considered affordable. There's not that much available, whatever you define it as, less than 200, less than 300. Eventually, are we going to be talking about less than 400 is considered affordable? That inventory keeps shrinking, and that's certainly a concern. Then I thought this was fascinating. I wanted to kind of understand the change. Now, some of the stuff is not in the study, by the way, so this is one of the examples that's not in there. But I wanted to show the change of median list price for each one of the jurisdictions between 2019 and 2025. And I put in the red over top of each one of those how much that change has happened in that 6-year period. And you could see it's with Henderson County being the lowest at 84,000, but these are all still significant changes, especially Madison and Transylvania counties, well over $200,000. So I imagine not too many people's incomes, households' incomes, have climbed to even $84,000. So you can see home ownership just keeps getting further and further out of reach for folks. And then we did look at senior care. So this is the examples on the left-hand side of what those facilities are. And you can see I've marked in the red box the 2025 vacancy rate versus 2019 numbers. And on the far right-hand side is what the national average is for vacancy rates. So for the most part, your vacancy rates have declined for this type of housing. But for me, the takeaway on this is you have lower vacancy rates, which means higher demand, right? But you have, remember, I had the household change in growth by age group. And where were you going to grow? At age 75 and older. So you've got this large segment, and not all of them will need senior care. And then there's even independent living in here, but many will, right? So there is a segment out there that's big and it's growing, and yet you have limited availability, with the exception of the nursing homes, which are very fluid just because of the nature of nursing homes, but very limited availability for the other product types. So this is certainly a segment for people to watch, and I think a significant need that's going to grow over the years. All right, so this one here, if I was just doing a single county, this would be easier to see and explain, but I'll tell you what I did real quick. So we wanted to look at, and I have 2 slides here because I couldn't fit all of them on one slide. We looked at the top 41 occupations for this region. And then what we did was we looked at the median wage that those workers earned. Then what we did, once I knew the median wage, I was like, okay, what can they reasonably afford to rent, or what can they reasonably afford to buy? And if that product, which they can rent or buy, the existing inventory that's available to them is above that, it's marked in red X. Basically saying that worker at that typical wage can't afford a typical rental or for sale housing. So you got a lot of red X's on here, right? Red is bad, green is good. If you see a job or occupation title in red on the left-hand side, that means it doesn't matter what market you're in. Every one of the geographies, that worker cannot afford to live in it. And so it demonstrates, and this is one of the more, I think, impactful slides or tables that we put in our studies, because it starts to then kind of make the connection of, okay, these are people that are driving your economy. Again, we didn't pick these. These are the top 41. I don't know why we picked 41, but nonetheless, we picked 41. And so these are the people that are driving the economy, right? Patrick Bowen's been here for 3 days now. I've got to encounter many of these workers, right? They're driving your local economy, but they can't afford to live here. Now, this is one, there's this caveat to this. This is one worker, one wage earner. And so many people have a spouse, a roommate, or whatever. But what this is telling you is you better have somebody else bringing in income. You better have a second source. You better have another job or whatever. So that you can see the challenge for the workforce, especially for younger people that are in entry-level positions in some of these, the struggle that they face. And then this is the rest of the occupations. Now, a little bit more with the green check marks, but not too many. And at the bottom, I just show you the total out of the 41 occupations by each one of these jurisdictions, how many of these occupations would have the incomes to be able to afford to rent or to buy. And you can see the red is the bigger number at the bottom, meaning most of the occupations they can't afford to reasonably rent or buy. All right, just a few more slides here. This is disaster impact. I was asked to include this as part of the study. So keep in mind, this is for the consolidated plan. We did not do a disaster impact study. That would be much, much more involved. So we were just looking at high-level data. But nonetheless, you had almost 20,000 housing units. This is all FEMA data, FEMA reported data for this area. So almost 20,000 housing units impacted. Vast majority, 85%, regardless of where you are, for the most part, roughly 85% were homeowner, and about 14% was renter-occupied units, with Buncombe County carrying the brunt of the damage, followed by Henderson County. So then another thing I did, because while there's housing units that were damaged, and again, if you think of the end objective of this is I'm trying to come up with housing gaps. Where are the needs by different affordability levels? So I wanted to factor in housing units that were damaged, but I didn't want to count them all because some of them it's minor damage. And so in this case, FEMA has a category for rentals, either minor or major damage. And so I only wanted to show the major damage in here. And this, Buncombe County had the larger number of 248, Henderson County at 124. Again, that doesn't mean that other households are in housing units that don't need intervention and help, but we were looking at those that suffered major damage. And so you had 400 region-wide for rentals, and then over 1,000 owner-occupied units. Now, this is a little different. FEMA has this broken out by dollar amount of damage, so we took anything that was $20,000 or more, and so you can see Buncombe County had the most, Henderson County following that at 313. All right, so here's the housing gap numbers. A lot of stuff went into this. Again, growth, substandard housing, people, severe cost burden, many other things that we looked at. We looked at what's available. Does that help meet part of the need? We looked at what was in the pipeline, what's coming, what are developers building. So a ton of stuff went into this thing. We did it by area median household income level. So the lowest income households are on the left-hand side, and you work your way across the right is the higher income households. So you have gaps for the rental side for everything in terms of those affordability levels, with the greatest, really the concentration for rental gaps being those that make 80% or less of area median household income levels. So, and then you could see who had the bigger gaps. No surprise, Buncombe County, followed by Henderson County. But significant gaps across the region. Just keep in mind, keep in mind, this is if you want to solve everything. So these numbers feel good, right? Big, almost 14,000. So that doesn't mean build 14,000 units. You can build your way through part of this. Part of this is just repairing, renovating existing housing stock. Some of this is just provide financial assistance. Like there's people paying over 50% of their income towards housing costs. Well, they could stay in that unit, but they need help. And so could it be a voucher? Could a voucher program be expanded or some comparable version of a voucher be developed?
Patrick, can I ask a question? John Conant from Hendersonville in statement. Good to see you again. Thanks for everything. I think that's an important point there is we can't build our way out of this.
Exclusively, no.
I mean, absolutely just cannot. And as the mission of this group, I think it's important for us to remember, it's easy for our elected officials to see that number and figure out how to build out, that we got to build our way out of it, but not realizing that a lot of this is, some of this can be is supply, subsidy, stabilization, all
Correct.
three.
Yeah.
Right. And I think as this group, we need, as we're looking at putting money out there, we got to keep that in mind. It's not about all new projects. We should divide our money into rehab, into other options. And you'll talk later, because I've seen this, or you would, talking about looking at our codes too, but that's a whole different argument. But I just want to make that point that I think we've learned with the pressure we're getting in Henderson County regarding growth, we can't build our way out of it. So,
Thanks, John. And that's a good point too, because to emphasize, because I think too many people, if I don't say it, they'll see these numbers and just think, okay, we need to build almost 14,000 units. Oh my gosh, that seems so daunting. No, You got to build some, but there's other ways to solve housing issues. Again, quality, cost burden, things like that are all fed into this. So I'm glad you reiterated that point. All right, and so this is owner housing gaps. Again, total numbers for each one of the jurisdictions at the top. By the way, I didn't have Asheville in here just because of space, but I do have individual estimates for Asheville's itself. And then we have the housing gaps by those different affordability levels, where here, in this case, it's notably different than what the rental showed, where it's really bigger gaps for households that earn 81% or more of median income. Now, yesterday, when I spoke at the community college, Blue Ridge, it came up where somebody mentioned, Mr. Bowen, you have zeros for those that make less than 30%, and even in Madison and Transylvania counties, you have less than 50. We are a provider of helping place people into affordable housing. We know we have customers or clientele that need this. This is not saying that there's no need, right? But one of the reasons we have zeros here for those lower income households, what was one of the first things I showed you was that renter household decline among the lowest income households. So you have this decrease, and it doesn't mean they're fleeing this area. Some probably are moving out, and I know that for a fact. But some of it is people getting married, right? You could have two people that make $30,000 each, but they become roommates or whatever the case is, but they join together. They were separate households, they come together. So nothing changed, right? They're still there. They just came together as a single household, and now their income is up to 60. And so I suspect part of the projections that the demographers do is they, in theory, and I know I've got some millennials here, in theory, millennials should be coming together, getting married, having kids. And so they've probably modeled some of that in here to say, look, some of these lower income households, they're just coming together and becoming more moderate income households. But nonetheless, so there is a need for the lowest income households in terms of home ownership. It's just in terms of the gap, trying to solve some of the shortages. You can see where the greater concentration is. And this is the last slide here. Again, we did, as part of the study, because the consolidated plan has its own objectives, I was asked to just put some broad recommendations together. So I listed those out. These are probably not too much different than what we had years ago. But you have data now that you can set really good goals, not even for you all, right, you as an organization, but for others that are trying to address housing. You have data points to look at to figure out, okay, where do we want to focus our efforts? There could be individual county plans developed. I'm not aware of those being done, but maybe they are. Capacity building, a lot of communities have groups, like you have this group that's spearheading efforts. It doesn't mean individual counties or even municipalities that we didn't study in here. They can have their own housing plans and things like that. I put on the fourth bullet point, developing some kind of centralized housing resource center. And it was interesting because last night it got brought up at the council meeting, and like nobody ever acknowledges this. And I'm really disappointed. I was like, okay, Asheville, you're at least thinking about this. And I know you all are doing some kind of online portal, web tool with housing. But what I have in my head, I've never seen. And what I think you could have is a really effective tool. And I think I used the phrase yesterday or last night, a low-hanging fruit, that somebody could develop something that's available, housing resource center, that's available and accessible to the general public as they try to find housing. How do I find out about vouchers or whatever? And again, you have housing authority that does that, but it's like a one-stop place for anybody that's trying to understand housing and data points and resources they can go to, but also for the development and investment community, that there's resources in there so that they can know. One of the things that could be in there could be this housing needs assessment, where they go and access that study. Oh, they've got a study done. They've got this resource center. I can contact the planning department. Everything is in one place. That could be developed to be an effective tool. So I was encouraged to hear last night some of the council members talk about what this could look like, and hopefully it gets pursued in some capacity. There's other things, and John, you mentioned zoning and things like that. So there's a lot of tools available, incentives available to encourage certain types of development. So again, we didn't study policy here. We can do that, but we weren't asked to do that. But there's certainly a lot of tools available to encourage and support certain types of development, whether it be affordable workforce or senior housing or whatever it might be. There's ways through that communities all across the country are exploring and implementing. And then the next to last bullet point there I just mentioned, anything you try to do, in our opinion, you need to focus on that senior segment because it's so big and it's growing. So that should be a focus of this region, not necessarily this group, but in that 35 to 54 age group as well. including those that are seeking affordable rental housing is probably, I think, an area of focus that should be considered. And then there's things to do, and again, I don't know if this is applicable to this region, but as, you know, I think most developers understand the opportunities that exist. And again, I showed you a lot of discouraging numbers or concerning numbers, but the takeaway, if you're in, like, if you put a developer hat on, my goodness, you have a great opportunity to develop a lot of product. There's a great need here. So you could, as a community, market certain types of housing that is needed. You could identify certain types of developers. There's really cool things that communities have done to bring developers in. And I can talk about that if anybody wants me to explain some of the, I think, cool things that communities have done. And that is it. So with that said, keep in mind the report is large. I try to hit on the biggest highlights here, but I'll answer whatever questions you have. You're shell-shocked. I gave you too much, I think. And a lot of stuff you probably knew, right? You suspected that these are challenges, but I think now you have numbers to point to. And so you could say, you know, look, we're going to set our goals, and part of that guidance on those goal setting is through this study. So there's a lot of value out that you can get out of this. John?
Just, again, more of a comment or question, and interested to see what's going on around the nation and other places you're doing a study. I think one of the challenges we have in Henderson County is we've got to D.R. Hortons and those kind of folks, those developers building houses and the big tract builders. We've got the supply issue, north of 300,000 is being dealt with because of the growth.
Yep.
I think where we struggle is finding those smaller investors, smaller contractors who are willing to do, you know, the infill development and the things that are a little tougher, the ADUs, the duplexes, the triplexes, that missing middle piece. And that's where we've got to, I know in Hendersonville, we're trying to attract those folks. We've got the supply piece now we've got to deal with, and even contractors to do rehab. We have some grant money that we're rehabbing, and we're struggling to find contractors that will do rehab work on some of these houses. So I think that's a challenge. It's more of a comment, but I assume that's happening around the nation and is pretty standard, I guess.
No, it is. And I mean, you know, the nation's going through a housing crisis. I'll give you all credit. I'm not saying this because I'm here in front of you and the affinity I have for this region of the country. You guys got ahead of this. I know it feels like you got this problem, right? But I was brought here in 2014 when housing needs assessments were not common. It just weren't. Communities weren't thinking of that. But people 11 years ago, hey, we're going through something. It's coming. You feel, it was probably feeling it was happening, but you also go, like, I think it's coming. So you all had the foresight to get a study done, and you had to because you had to consolidate a plan. But I will tell you this, you have done a lot of things, especially here in the city of Asheville, for example, where you've come up with different programs and incentives and you're trying to address housing. So one of the things I just more anecdotally saying this is I did look back a few years ago and I was like, how much housing are you adding? Affordable housing. How much are you adding? And every year you all kept doing it. You kept doing something. And so we didn't get really busy as a firm until about 2019, COVID changed everything. 2020, 2021. So kudos to you all that you were ahead 5 years. Doesn't mean you don't have problems, but at least you've been proactive and you continue to be proactive. And so I often point when I'm in front of a group like yours or, you know, county commission, city council, or whatever, Mr. Bowen, where should we look? I go, Asheville. Go look at Asheville region. They are proactive. It might not fit your community, but at least look at some of the things they do. And so for you all, I'd say, one, look at yourselves because you have done some good things and you should be very proud of that. But the other thing I'll mention, because there's so many communities going through this all over the nation, and everybody's trying different things. And again, one size doesn't fit all, so there's not the magic bullet that's going to solve every issue. If it was me, and maybe some of you are already familiar with this, but I would be looking at like localhousingsolutions.org. Right? They've got a lot of really good examples in there. One explains really easy to understand, but then they give a lot of examples. So even for the public that wants to understand, hey, what could we be doing as a community? That is a really good source. Again, localhousingsolutions.org. And then the other one, I don't know if any of you have seen it, and again, I'm probably getting the name wrong. It's the League of Cities put it out, and it's the Housing Accelerator Playbook. Housing Accelerator, I don't know if affordable's in front of that or not, of the name, but Housing Accelerator Playbook. And it's kind of like what Local Housing Solutions did, where they looked at examples across the country, kind of give an overview of what did this community do, how did it work, why did they do it? And so for people like yourselves, but other organizations and advocates for housing across the region, to me, I would start there, just see what are other people trying and doing. I personally have seen some efforts that noble and good intentions, and they backfire, but you can learn from those, right? Well, we want to do something like that, but that community did something wrong, it just didn't work. So I am a good resource. I like doing what I do, so y'all could reach out to me and say, hey, Patrick, the consortium's talking about this. Have you seen that? Can you point us to a city? And maybe the best value that I could offer to you, hopefully the study itself is a good value to you, but is putting you in contact with the community to say, hey, Patrick, we're looking at trying this. And I'd not just simply point us to a community. Do you know them? And most of the communities are just like you, right? They all want to help each other. You're not competitors. And so you all want to help each other. So yes, I'm going to put you in touch with this city, with this economic development group, this planning department, whoever was spearheading their housing efforts, and say, talk to them. They had a really clever thing, and you could probably learn from them. Like, oh, we wish we would have done this differently. This is what worked. This is how we had to articulate it to the general public to get them on board. So you've got resources out there and people I can absolutely connect you with to start having that conversation of saying, hey, tell us what you did. How did this work? And so anyway.
I have a question about the annual turnover of voucher holders.
Mhm.
So you said that it's 539 across the whole PSA is what we see turning over. Is that a typical number? And
I knew you were going to add, as you started, I was like, he's going to go there. And
because that's one of the opportunities that, we obviously, when you see people that are voucher holders, you want to see them become not voucher holders eventually, where they eventually build
Yeah,
enough, they
correct.
have enough wage growth, or they marry and they have, combined income, and they're able to move into housing that they don't need a voucher anymore. So
Right.
they get out of that income bracket. I'm curious how much of our area is experiencing that wage stagnation, facing also the increased housing costs.
Right.
Maybe not stagnation, but not keeping up with housing
Yeah.
costs. Yeah. That's
So-
what I was talking
So I can't, I don't normally do the percentage, so I couldn't tell you what's normal. I would say those numbers feel small, that turnover feels smaller, because it feels like in other communities we look at, they're in for a while and then they're out, whether they just left the area or the incomes have climbed and so they can get out of the program or whatever their circumstances are. This feels like a low turnover.
So, if you look at the wait list households for Buncombe County to the annual program turnover, that's what, 8 or 9 years?
9 years, yeah.
Yeah, worth of wait list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for Patrick while we have him?
Yes, sir. Oh, your microphone?
Sam, Mike?
Force habit. I was so shell-shocked by looking at the profession, the NAICS codes, and what they can rent and what they can
Yeah.
own. That is, harrowing doesn't even begin to cover it. But I'm also wondering, so much of what was helpful in comparative analysis is seeing how Asheville and Buncombe compare to the PSA, and how this compares to North Carolina, and how this compares to the United States. Do you have any figures for how that stacks up against other? Did you look at how those professions can rent and own in other areas, how that goes statewide or anything for the nation? Because there is this challenge where, housing is difficult here. Economic development is also difficult here for getting higher wages comparatively. All of us are a huge swath of us are AICP, and they always do the annual survey, and the Southeast always lags behind. So I'm wondering if that's true for the state and for the region, or if this is uniquely terrifying.
It's not unique. So we do this in every study, and again, we do it a little bit different because if I'm just doing a county or something. By the way, one of the maybe that's pretty easy to process, right? Red X, green check mark. But maybe what's more telling, and we can do this if you get to the point where, like, Patrick, we want to see the actual rent, that retail salesperson, right? What is that income for our area, and what is the rent? and then compare that to median rent or whatever. I think we used two-bedroom fair market rent to compare with. But you would see in some of those occupations, they're close. Like, you know, they can't afford it technically, but they're only $50 short or $100. But you're going to see a lot of occupations, they're hundreds of dollars. There's no hope you're going to get another job to cover that. It's unlikely. So you're going to have a second wage earner in that household. And the same thing for home ownership. It'd be incredibly telling, but again, I just couldn't do it in the format that we had for home ownership, where I would show you, okay, this person earns this, so they can buy a home for $175,000. Well, what's your median list price for this area? Close to $400,000. So you're not even close. And go ahead and double that income. You're still short. And some of those occupations, I venture to say, triple that income, and you still can't buy. And so we could do that. We can show you that, because now that's gives you more of a scale, like how short are we? And so, and again, I can do that if you guys get to the point where, like, hey, Patrick, we want to educate the public a little bit more, because it's not enough to have an X and say they can't afford. How short are they? Especially on the home ownership. Home ownership side would be stunning to see how short the workforce is in terms of being able to reasonably afford something. So, and you don't have very much that's priced under $200,000. You don't have very much priced under $300,000. So you could cobble together a good, again, I'm not making a case for anything, I'm just educating. But for those that want to make a case, there's some compelling data that you could do that to say, we got a disconnect between wages and housing affordability.
And you don't have that information statewide or for any other larger areas?
I don't know if because we just, by the way, we did the whole state of North Carolina for the Realtors Association and other groups, and I presented that in February. I don't remember if we put that in. I don't think I did, because that was getting deeper in the weeds and they weren't looking for that deep of a dive. So no, I don't have data that compares it to the state to see how much you're short. I will just say the last 30, 40, 50 markets we've done, everybody's got the red X.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I know that being from Transylvania County, we are acutely aware of all of this stuff, but it's hard to be able to put the numbers together. You know, the actual number of units looks small, but in the grand scheme of things. So I really appreciate the way that you've approached this.
Thank you.
This report and everything, I think, has been really helpful for us in all of our grant requests and conversations, and has been for many years. So I appreciate your work on that. One of the things that I also appreciated in your remarks here with us today is about how those waitlist numbers for available units really are not indicative of the entire wait,
Right.
And the entire need for those units. And I think that that's something that we've really harped on is with our council, and, you know, in different conversations, is we have that number that shows there are 250 households that are on the wait list, but that doesn't even scrape the surface.
Sure.
Because there are all those people that are saying, you know,
I gave
like,
up.
I'm not even gonna wait, I
Yeah.
can't possibly wait that long.
Absolutely.
And so, I appreciate your remarks on that as well. I think that is something that we think about often, and we should make sure to communicate that with our elected officials as well, as we start to talk about how important these projects really are, because the number that's on this chart really doesn't do justice to the entirety of the need there.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And keep in mind, by the way, and this goes for all of you, it's not uncommon for maybe just, you know, Hendersonville itself reaching out to me, or Henderson County, and saying, hey, Patrick, we are talking about this issue, this trend, this data point. Do you have more data? Because one of the things to keep in mind, we have the amount of information we collected. You saw very little here really today. Today was a big picture, but even in the 300+ page report, you didn't get everything. So I have so much stuff that we have collected. It's unreasonable to put it in the study, but I have it. So it does not hurt to make an inquiry and say, Patrick, this is the topic. Do you have data? Did you already have it? Or is that something easy to get? Or can you point us to it? Please use me as a resource. I can save you so much time. Because some of it could be just a push button. Here, I got it, go. Or, yeah, this group has it, or I can get it in one day. Let me get it, and, you know, I won't charge you for it. So we want to help. You know, again, I'm an analyst, consultant, but at the same time, I want to see housing move forward. I don't always share this with everybody, but when I graduated from college in 1992, if those that are old enough remember, we were in a recession. It was really hard to get a job, good job. And I wanted to pursue the legal profession. I wanted to start out as a paralegal. My hourly pay was $6 an hour, so about $12,000 a year in 1992. Really struggled. Guess what? I qualified for a low-income tax credit project. Didn't even know what that was. I wasn't in this field. That changed my life, because I was able to get affordable housing, a good place to raise my family and get get up off the ground. And here I am, doing these studies all over the country, employ 30 people. So affordable housing made a difference to me. Sometimes the face of affordable housing, we've got these stereotypes. Well, here you go. Here's somebody that through hard work, some great breaks in life, but affordable housing got me here. So it can make a difference, and so I'm grateful for it. So that's why I don't want to just leave and go, hey, you paid me for a study, I'm done. Good luck. Nope. You keep talking to me. I'm going to bug you all. I'm going to bug the city. I'm going to bug this man here and say, hey, what are you guys doing? How's it going? What have you tried? What are you hearing? What's the city doing? What's Hendersonville doing? I want to know. I want to learn, but I do that everywhere. So I am a good resource to say, Patrick, what do you know? What are you finding out? What's the recent trend or some activities communities are doing? So anyway, I could be a good asset to you all.
Thank you, Patrick. And I'm sure Patrick will hang around if y'all want to kind of, pull his ear aside from the meeting. Patrick will be available to be able to answer any questions afterwards. So thank you very much, Patrick, for coming, and thank you for your hard work on this. Our vice chair had to step away, so we are without a chair. So in order to open public comment to folks in the room, I have some unfortunate news that our technology for public comment is not working. But Sophia is going to make some information available for folks to be able to submit public comment to us via email so that we can add that to this meeting's minutes. But if there's anyone in the room that wants to provide public comment, we do want to formally allow for that. So if this body someone would make a motion to open public comment so that we could at least offer that, I would appreciate it.
I move to open public comment.
A second.
Would anyone like to provide public comment? You would have 3 minutes to speak, and you may approach the podium.
Do we have to vote on the motion?
I don't know.
Okay, let's do it just in case.
Yep.
Let's cover our bases. Can I get a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
No nays, so we'll skip that. Public comment is open.
Seeing none. Oh,
Jake Comper. Patrick touched on the Housing Local Solutions sort of organization. I just kind of wanted to put that out there because there's call for applications from the Housing Solutions Lab for participating jurisdictions who kind of want like a one-on-one sort of collaborative effort. Applications are due on like this Friday, the 29th, but I'm just throwing it out there for anybody that wants to. I'm happy to put one together. I just need to know if there's any interest, and they'll come down and sort of, if we're selected, come and talk to us about what we can do for our codes, organizations, sort of efforts going forth that across the nation, but that's from the local Housing Solutions Lab. They're putting that on, calling for applications. Just want to put that out there for anybody that's interested. And that's my comment.
anyone else like to provide comment? All right, I would suggest that there be a motion to close public comment.
So moved to close.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That being the end of the agenda, I would suggest that there be a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
We're adjourned.